Hi everyone, Midway Piper here. I hope all is going well. Happy Falcon Friday. And you know what Friday means? Pipes and Books Day. Before we jump into the books though, again, it's the only Falcon I own. The only bowl that I own for a Falcon. Whoa, that would have been bad. And in it, as promised in yesterday's video, I have some GLPs, Elipsis Flake. This is from their Zeitgeist collection. I believe, what's it called? I have another blend from it. Keep wanting to say Jackknife blend, but that's not correct. I'm sure I'll think of it after this video's done. But anyways, April 1st, 2025. Against a backdrop of rich Virginia tobacco, small leaf Izmir, St. James Perique, and a trace of heirloom burley. Create a dreamscape of flavors that dance across your palate. Its natural sweetness mingles with notes of citrus, ethereal hints of exotic spice, and a delicately nutty character. Engaging your senses, inviting your imagination to explore what lies beyond. There's definitely a citrusy Virginia smell to this tobacco. If you're not familiar, it's a broken flake. Perfect moisture out of the tin. Perfect. And if you watched yesterday's video, I did a review of the San Sepulcro from Cornell and Deal, small batch. And I said, especially at the beginning, it was very harsh. It needs some time to smooth out a little bit. This one I would say is the opposite. This is a really good smell, good flavor, right out of the tin. There's definitely a little bit of the, I'm getting some of that, a little bit of that oriental spice in there. Not overwhelming in any way, but it definitely holds its own. You can feel a little bit of that Perique. You can always feel like a little bit of like a tingle towards the back of your throat, which is, for me at least, typical with the Periques. And yeah, there's a little bit of burley flavoring to it, but it's not, it's a good burley. It's not like a cigarette-y kind of burley, like I think of when I think like for me, Carter Hall. So Elipsis Flake GLPs, fantastic. And again, I know the GLP stuff is produced by Cornell and Deal. It just kind of amazes me, you know, having this and the San Sepulcro in the same batch, in the same order, and doing them back to back. This is just so much smoother. I almost got 2 tins of this and 1 tin of the San Sepulcro. And I wish I kept the cart like that. Yeah, this is nice. It definitely reminds me of GLP's Cairo is another one that I like. Geometry. That's the name of the blend. Got it. See, it was up there somewhere. The other GLP's, in the Zeitgeist series that I have. This is a really nice blend. Yeah, I highly suggest this one. I'm not sure what other people have thought of it. I had it in my cart, and I wasn't sure when I was going to get around to ordering, so I purposefully avoided any reviews on it. I didn't want anything to affect my judgment of the blend before I tried it, so maybe now I can go back and watch some reviews of it. My other big glider finally died, so I figured I'd break out the light blue one. It's a nice color. Alright, anyways, it's just staying lit very well. I did not really do the fold and stuff method. Today I sort of broke them up a little bit, so. Not that it's hard, it's like a crumbling flake anyways, so. It doesn't hold together well enough, I don't think, for much of a fold and stuff. Alright. 7 minutes in. Let's finally get to the book stuff. Finished 2 books, I guess, this week. Not too much again. Like I said, my work schedule has been insane. I haven't even had time to do that much audio. I did finish reading The Royal Table. It's a book I found at a used library sale. An outline of the Jewish dietary laws. That sun feels amazing. It's supposed to rain later today again, but I'm going to enjoy this while I'm here, or while it's here. I've mentioned before that I can't for the life of me understand a lot of the additions and interpretations of Jewish dietary laws. So I figured I'd read this book and try to wrap my mind around it, and didn't really do much for me as far as helping me understand that. So other than over time, rabbis have extracted from what is, I thought, fairly straightforward in the Bible, what qualifies as dietary laws, but there's a heck of a lot more in Orthodox Jewish dietary laws. And I pretty much got that over time rabbis have added these things are interpreted, let's say. A lot of you guys are probably familiar with halal foods, is what it's technically classified as, and halal meats, which are the animal has to be butchered a certain way. So they do explain some of that in this book, which is essentially to minimize pain and cruelty for the animal, which is why it's butchered in the way that it is. So it's a pretty thorough explanation of that process. So that was pretty cool to read. But yeah, other than that, didn't really get too much additional that I wasn't aware of. So, read it. I did some research, and I still don't really get it. But anyways, that was the royal table. Okay, moving along to, you know what? We'll skip to this one real quick. We'll jump to a book that I got this week. I got several books actually this week, so I'll show you those in a second. But along the same veins of that book, I ordered a book from, I mentioned previous videos that I've been watching some lectures by a rabbi. I find his very interesting to listen to. And so he wrote a book that I picked up. And his name, that's him, Rabbi Alon Nava. And this book is about the Jewish interpretation of the Messiah coming. So that's another huge, obvious discrepancy between Judaism and Christianity. So I figured I'd pick up that book and read that at some point. So yeah, pick that up. Not sure when I'm going to get to reading that, but looking forward to it. The other book I started and finished this week, Frederick Bachman's My Friends. Phenomenal book. Absolutely phenomenal book. This has easily jumped to my #1 read this year so far. Easily. Frederick Bachman has written a lot of books. One nonfiction book, Things My Son Needs to Know About the World. I've read that one. It's a short one. Pretty good. Fiction, A Man Called Ove. There was a movie of that made with, I think, Tom Hanks not too long ago. They changed the name from Ove to something else. I don't remember. I still haven't seen the movie yet, but the book was phenomenal. It's about an old curmudgeon, essentially. And he has some younger neighbors move in. And they're very lighthearted, the polar opposite of him, and how they sort of turn him from a curmudgeon to a relatively happy old guy. Great book. Let's see, what else have I read? Anxious People. I've read that one. That was a great one. I think there's a British TV series that was made off of that book. And that was about a crime that was committed, and sort of like a whodunit kind of thing. Beartown, Deal of a Lifetime, Us Against You, The Winners. I've got all those books. Great writer, great writer. This one hits you in the feels. Phenomenal book, like I said. Let's see. Yeah, I'll read you what it was about real quick. Most people don't even notice them. 3 tiny figures sitting at the end of a long pier in the corner of one of the most famous paintings in the world. Most people think it's just a depiction of a wide expanse of sea, but Louisa, soon to be 18 years old and an inspiring artist herself, knows otherwise. She's determined to find out the story behind these 3 enigmatic figures. More than 2 decades before, in a distant seaside town, a group of teenagers find refuge from their bruising home lives by spending long summer days on an abandoned pier telling silly jokes, sharing secrets, and committing small acts of rebellion. These lost souls find in each other a reason to get up every morning, a reason to dream, and a reason to love. Out of that summer emerges a transcendent work of art, a painting that after a chance encounter is in an alleyway, will unexpectedly be placed into Louisa's care. She embarks on a surprise-filled cross-country journey to discover how the painting came to be and to decide what to do with it. The closer she gets to the painting's birthplace, the more anxious she becomes about what she'll find. Louisa's complicated life is proof that happy endings are sometimes possible, but they don't always take the form you expect. It's phenomenal. The story sort of takes place during two different times. So you find out a little bit about Louisa and a little bit about this painting, and then it jumps back to the story of, it's actually 4 friends, only 3 of which are in the painting, really. But it's a phenomenal book. Characters that lead very difficult lives, difficult home lives, abusive relationships, but how a little bit of good can go a long way. If you're looking for a book to read, I highly, highly suggest Frederick Bachman's My Friends. Great audio as well on this one. Highly suggest this book. Do it. If you're looking for a read, this is the one. This is the one. All right. Next up, what am I reading now? Well, I'm still reading this one, The Bishop's Villa. Not too far along still. I guess almost halfway through it. This is a physical sit down and read, and like I said, time has been short this week, so haven't made much progress still on it, but still a pretty good book so far. Again, I talked about it, I think, in the last couple Pipes and Books videos. Around the time of World War II, Nazis come into a small Italian village, and what happens? So, Bishop's Villa, still reading that one. And finally, the audiobook I'm currently reading. You know, I don't know that I've really talked about him since I've been making these Pipes and Books videos. It's been a little while since I picked up one of his books, but I have a healthy collection of his books. Not all of them, but a healthy collection. But the new Stephen King book came out. Never Flinch. About a quarter of the way through that. There's the bookmark. I am enjoying this book quite a bit. Again, I don't know that I necessarily call it one of his best books, but it's still pretty good nonetheless. This is another book in the Holly Gibney series. I think there's, 5 books in it. You first meet Holly Gibney in the Mr. Mercedes trilogy. And then I think the last book he put out was simply called Holly. So again, another story about Holly Gibney, the detective. And then this one is also about Holly Gibney. Sort of 2 crimes happening simultaneously. So, good stuff. I know a lot of people that associate Stephen King with horror, supernatural horror, and things of that sort because of books like It and The Shining and all that kind of stuff. These Mr. Mercedes or the Holly Gibney stories, not quite as heavy an emphasis on the horror and supernatural aspects, but the Mr. Mercedes trilogy a little bit more so. But Holly in this one, so far, not especially really the supernatural at all. Great character work, though. Stephen King is a master of character work. Phenomenal character work. Very underrated, as far as I think most people are concerned, or loosely associated with, or loosely familiar with Stephen King. So that book just came out Tuesday. So I'm doing that book right now. And then a couple other books I got this week. We'll stick with the sort of crime-solving stuff. I also picked up the newest Michael Connelly book, Nightshade. He's the author of all the Harry Bosch books, Lincoln Lawyer series. I have all the Lincoln Lawyer series. I have all the Harry Bosch books. And this one, I guess, is starting with a new character, a new main character. I don't think there's any connections, for the most part, from what I understand, to any of those previous characters. So, Nightshade, Michael Connelly. And then the last two, and then I've got a third book to show you that I didn't just pick up, but I picked up Penguin Classics deluxe editions of the Dharma Bums. You guys know I love these Penguin Classics deluxe editions. This is by Jack Kerouac, one of the Beat writers, Beat generation. I'm pretty interested in the Beat generation. Jack Kerouac, Allen Ginsberg. Also got this. On the Road is the other really famous book by Jack Kerouac. And probably unless you're in certain circles or have certain interests, you're probably not familiar with this other Beat writer. He happens to be my favorite of the Beat writers, actually. Gary Snyder. Gary Snyder, a Beat author, poet. I first got interested in him, I guess when I was in college. He's an environmentalist, Zen Buddhist. When I was in college, I got pretty heavily into Zen Buddhism. And I went to school for environmental science, wildlife science. And that's when I discovered Gary Snyder. And just kind of been reading his work since then. And I picked up, what happened the other day? Something happened the other day. I hadn't picked up any Gary Snyder stuff in a long time, actually. So I graduated from college 15 years ago now. That's crazy. Anyways. And I went to get out some of my Gary Snyder stuff, and I realized I couldn't find most of it. I'll do a video on Gary Snyder later on. But I couldn't find a lot of my Gary Snyder stuff. And I think what happened is I brought it home from college, and for some reason I didn't take the books with me. When I got home from college, I had 4 days before I had an internship start. So at the time, my parents lived in Northern Virginia. I went to school in Syracuse, New York. And I got an internship working the summer and into the fall in Minnesota, little town Ely, Minnesota. I got an internship working at the International Wolf Center, and I was doing education programs there. But I had, from the day after graduation, I had 5 days, I think it was, after graduation to get all my stuff packed up in my car. I had an old Jeep Cherokee at the time. I miss that car so much. It was awesome. And so I had 5 days to get all my stuff packed up. Drove back down to my parents' house in Virginia, repack for Minnesota, and then to drive out to Minnesota, northern tip of Minnesota, before orientation started for the internship. So it was a bit of a rush job. And then after that internship was up, I moved out here to where I am in New York now. And there's a lot of stuff I left in my parents' house. And then when my dad retired and they moved, I kind of figured I'd been living here for, I don't know, 8-ish years or so at that point. 9 years, 10 years maybe. And they had stuff at the house still from my apartment in Syracuse. And they asked if I wanted to go through it, if I wanted anything. And I said, if I've been living for 10 years, or 10 years essentially without it, I probably don't need it. And so I think I left my Gary Snyder books there. And when they cleaned out the house to move, probably got rid of them then. So I have 3 here. And so I went on a little eBay shopping spree, and I ordered some copies of the Gary Snyder books I remember really liking, and then a couple others that I never had before. So those should be trickling in over the next couple of days. So when I have all those in, I'll do a Gary Snyder video. But one that did come in today, actually, the selected letters of Allen Ginsberg and Gary Snyder. That's Gary Snyder. He's still alive, actually. He's, I think, 94, 95 years old. He lives in Northern California, I believe. So, yeah, I just got this one in the mail today. Again, Allen Ginsberg being one of the more famous of the Beat generation. So, it's just a collection of letters written between Gary Snyder and Allen Ginsberg. Nothing crazy. Just real quick, reading the back of it. One of the central relationships in the Beat scene was the long-lasting friendship of Allen Ginsberg and Gary Snyder. When Ginsberg ventured west in 1955, he met Snyder, who was sitting zazen and writing poetry in Berkeley. So that's Zen Buddhism. Ginsberg introduced Snyder to the East Coast beat writers, including Jack Kerouac, while Snyder became a model for the steady and self-sufficient writer and seeker that part of Ginsberg wanted to become. Beginning in 1956 and continuing through 1995, the two men exchanged more than 850 letters, the most significant of them contained in this collection. These letters paint the biographical and literary portraits of two of America's most important and most fascinating poets. So, that's the one that came in. Yeah. If that piques your interest at all, I would highly recommend. There's a lot of videos of Gary Snyder doing various readings of some of his poetry, and lived a very, very interesting life. Very interesting life. So if you're interested, I would highly recommend checking out some Gary Snyder interviews and readings and videos and such on YouTube. There's lots of them. But yeah, that's that. That's this week in books. So like I said, I'll do another video when the rest of the Gary Snyder stuff comes in. And we'll talk to you then.